my mother had died, and 2 days later, my baby girl, my 4-year-old at the time, I'm literally planning my mom's funeral. I get a knock at the door from across the street and said, Maya, she's passed out. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm like, okay, cool. She's just playing. And I hear fire trucks and ambulances and all these things. And I run across the street. I see her bleeding from her head, unconscious. And so basically what happened is my neighbor was cutting his grass and a rock shot out and hit her. And this is 2 days after my mother died. And so my daughter goes to the ICU. And while I'm in the ICU, I get a call from my dad. And he's like, I know you don't want to hear this right now. His mother, your grandmother's in the ICU. And my grandmother dies 2 weeks later.
Oh my
and so this is all in this month of March. No social media posts made me feel better. Our new house didn't make me feel better. The car didn't make me feel better. Not saying we can't have possessions, but those things did not fill my soul. It was literally me getting back to asking myself this question. Trent, what truly matters?
Welcome to The Dash. You know, The Dash is that tiny line between your life start date and end date. It's your story, the chapters in your book, your journey. Get ready for real conversations with real people telling real stories about the realities of failure, setbacks, and success. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
Let's go. We're rolling. Let's go. The Dash in 3, 2, 1.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Dash Podcast. Thank you guys so much for your support. Thank you for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed yet, please hit subscribe. Share this with a friend. Tell them to subscribe. And, you know, my hope is just that you get some good nuggets here, feel inspired. And I know you will today because I am really, I have to pull up what his Instagram bio says. It says, empowering you to access inner peace, unlock unique purpose, and develop authentic power to live your best life. And that is who he is and what he embodies. Y'all, Trent Shelton. Welcome to the Dash Podcast,
Thank you.
Trent.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you.
Oh, Trent. First of all, I got Trent on the Dash Podcast. Like, what the heck is going on? God is good to me. I must have a little bit of favor. No, I really appreciate you taking your time. I know you're super busy. And I've been following you for a really, really, really long time. And you have been so inspiring and instrumental to so many people that you probably don't even realize it. So I appreciate that.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, so let's talk real brief about who is Trent Shelton. For those that have never heard of Trent, they don't follow you on Instagram, and they're like, who is this guy? Who is this guy with these locks coming up in here? So who is Trent?
Just a person who cares to help people. Not a perfect human being. Been through a lot. Former NFL player, lost that. Trying to find myself. And so generally just the person that wants to help people live in purpose, and that's it, and help them experience peace, because I believe peace is the most important thing in life. So yeah, that's me. That's who I am.
I love that. So let's go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times when we look back over our lives, we don't realize that God is preparing us for the now, right?
For sure.
Who is Trent? Who was little Trent? Growing up, like, where do you come from? How did you grow up? All that kind of stuff.
It's a great question. Not many people ask that. So, I was born in Little Rock, Arkansas. I moved to.
Okay, look, it's a bunch of. We had a lot of people on here that are from Arkansas. Yeah, I love that.
So I was not even a year though. I moved to New Orleans, Kenner area, and then I lived there to 7th grade. Then I moved to Southwest side of Fort Worth. Went to North Crowley, graduated from there. But sports is my whole life. Like, I got 2 older brothers. Since I stepped out my mom's womb, it was like, I want to play sports. So since I was 4, been playing all baseball, basketball, football. Football ended up being my route. I got a scholarship to Baylor. And so I played at Baylor for 4 or 5 years. And then I went as an undrafted free agent to the NFL. So I went to the Indianapolis Colts in 2007. 2008, I was with the Seahawks. 2009, I was with the Redskins. So if you're listening, you're probably like, that's a lot of teams in 3 years. So that was my NFL career, very up and down, getting released 9 or 10 times. But yeah, that's.
Oh, this your page coming up. Hold on, see, I'm on his page, y'all. I'm on his page on Instagram. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
All right. But yeah, that's who I am. Just the youngest of 3 boys, and just trying to find his way through life.
You know, it's interesting because you don't oftentimes hear NFL players, ex-NFL players, or ex-athletes that do what you do. Because, like, you do it on a whole nother level. Like, I would think that you always knew you were going to be on a stage doing motivational speaking life into people. how did that transition happen?
Yeah, so my dad's a pastor. So growing up, there was always, so I'm the youngest of 3 boys, right? So I was always with my mother. Like she would drag me to all the conferences, church conferences, and I would be there, and there would always be callings on my life. Like, you're gonna be a speaker one day. And obviously I wasn't trying to hear that. I was like, I'm trying to be a football player. So I was oblivious, deaf to those things, blind to those things.
Sure.
And I want to do music. I mean, we even rapped. You know, that was my thing, rapping on stages.
Trent, hold on, you remember one of your raps? Should I put you on the spot to make it?
I probably can't say it on here.
It was one of those before raps.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, we definitely.
I love that.
Yeah, so that's what I want to do. Anything with stage, that was it. I want to do some type of music, but. You know, when I look back on my life, I never wanted to do this. I tell people all the time, I'm an introvert by nature. I never wanted to do this. If you ask my dad, he would, out of the 3 brothers, I would be the last pick to be a speaker. And it was in 2009 when I started this, but it was me really just sharing my journey for therapy for myself. I wanted to share my journey just to help myself as well as help others. And the big catalyst for me getting into this space was my best friend committing suicide. And my college roommate, lost a lot of things, lost football, lost a relationship, and he killed himself. And it was my promise to him at his service that I would live the rest of my life helping people with their self-worth, helping people know that just because something is over doesn't mean your life is over. And so when people say, like, why are you so passionate what you do? It's because of a promise that I made to him.
I want to stay there for a second.
Yeah.
I talked to, a lot of athletes, interviews. That is a piece of, especially in the Black community, being brought up in this world where, like, sports is life.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody is fighting. Sometimes it's because of the love. Sometimes it's for the motive of, like, bringing everybody out the hood, whatever it is. But when your value is centered around this one thing forever, and then it is pulled from you, as an example of your best friend, unfortunately, and I'm so sorry to hear about that. And I'm sure you went through it as well.
Absolutely.
There's this transition of, like, you literally lost everything that brings value to you. Yeah. Because that's what it was. Like, there was no other option.
Absolutely. I mean, I think everybody can relate in some capacity. From an athlete standpoint, it's like, this is why people love you. This is why people celebrate you. It wasn't never like Trent the person. It was Trent, the NFL player, my homeboy Trent that plays for such and such. And so your worth is wrapped up into that. Your identity is wrapped up into that. So when you even think your purpose is that. So when you lose it, it's like, who am I? Nobody loves me anymore. And then when you do lose it, you start to realize that a lot of people are around you just for what surrounded your life and not for who you are. And so you go through this phase. I remember being back here and at my parents' house. I just got cut from the Colts, and it was September. So everybody in the city, not a lot of people make it out the city. So everybody knows in Fort Worth who I am and things like that. Absolutely. So I literally didn't go out, because if I'm out, people are going to say, Trent, why are you here? Oh, you got cut? So I literally kept myself in my parents' house, and I realized this, like, anything you suppress will turn into depression. Like, suppression turns into depression. So I literally bottled myself in, depressed, turned to things I shouldn't have turned to just to numb the pain. And a lot of athletes do that because it's like, who am I? Like, student athlete is a myth. Go to college and try to work an internship. They're going to laugh at you. So it's like my whole entire life, I've been primed to be this person, and one day it's over, and you expect me to be put into society and just be normal again. Like, I never even had a 9 to 5. Like, how am I going to get a job? How am I going to do these things? And so it's a very tough process. And I deal with athletes pretty much daily that are struggling with this.
And it's interesting because, like you said, anybody can relate. It could be like, if your family put pressure on you to be this one thing, you're going to be a doctor, and you're going through all the steps to fulfill this dream for your family. And then, if you decide to go another direction, for me, being on radio for 19 years, that's all anybody ever knew about me.
Right.
And so I haven't spoken on it a lot, but I try to, because I have to, like, do the therapy for myself, and I go to therapy as well. But for me, stepping away from radio, now the question I get everywhere I go, Trent, so what are you doing now? Yeah. And it makes you feel invaluable to a certain extent, because I am now trying to figure out how to put a label and to have like a title to make it good enough for other people so maybe the world doesn't think I've fallen off.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
But it's like I know I'm all right, you know, but they can't detach me from this radio thing. You know what I mean? And it's so like it's just constant battle. And some days I do say like, wait, I didn't work today. I didn't do anything today. Like nobody called my phone trying to book me today. Like, so it's this battle. You know, I've known people that have been married for 20 years. When the marriage falls apart, now you're no longer husband or wife and they've lost that title. And so loss is difficult. It's a process.
Absolutely. I mean, I think why it's so tough is like people think that's like your Mecca, right? It's like that thing is like the greatest thing you ever be. And so even with what I do now, like I don't let the highs get me too high. When people say you changed my life, I'm like, I didn't change your life. Like God did, you did. I'm just a seed planter because I know that if I tie my identity to these things of like, oh, I changed people's lives or people love me because social media have all these followers, what happens when that leaves? And so I'm always doing the work of like, who are you at the core of your soul? Like with nothing, like no titles, no money, no anything. Who are you? And I think you have to be good with that person. And when you get to that point, I think everything else is just like extra credit.
Is that a point though? Do you ever get to that point or is it the highs and lows? Because I didn't think that I identified myself as a radio personality, right? I always used to be like, I'm just Jade until I no longer had the title. And I'm like, well, when did this happen that I'm feeling a little less than? Or look, you already know how social media works too.
Yeah.
One day you'll post something, it'll go viral. The next day you post something, I'm like, is something wrong with Instagram today? Like, so it's a constant process, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it's a constant battle. And that's why you gotta, I feel like having some type of checkpoint with yourself, right? To detach from those things. Like I literally, and this is hard, you know, I fail at it sometimes, but I'm always detaching my emotions from the outcome, right? My outcome doesn't determine, even at the event, like, you know, if it was 2 people there, of course I would want it to be sold out, but my question is, did I do purpose and did I live purpose? And that's my checkpoint every single day. And sometimes that's, you know, just getting out of bed because I'm struggling that day and telling somebody have a nice day. Sometimes it's talking to 2,000 people. But I think when you start to put your worth in measurables that can change, like you can't control the algorithm on social media. You know what I mean? You can't control how many people show up here or there. Of course, you kind of can influence it. But when you take your worth out of that and realize like you've been given worth. And so even in this conversation, what helped me was like, I realized this with God, right? Worth is not something that the world gives you. It's been given to you by God. So I think it's Jeremiah 1:5, right? I knew you before I formed you. And I've always stuck on to that because so many times we attach our worth to these things that like to say like the puppet masters in our life, right? It's like, oh, I'm making money, so I feel good about myself. Oh, people love me on social media, or I had a post that went viral. I feel good about myself. You got to cut the strings and say, I feel good about myself because of how God created me to be and who I am. And I know that's easier said than done, but that's where my worth rests. Because if you put your worth into the world and give it away, then it's like Russian roulette every single day with your mental health.
Ooh, Russian roulette with your mental health. Whew. So where you are right now, it don't fit.
Yeah.
You're an athlete,
No,
you're an
no.
introvert, but you're a national speaker.
Yeah.
You motivate the world. Let's talk about that transition. Like, when you look back, it's like it wasn't in your mind. It wasn't leading to this purpose. You weren't choosing this purpose. And there's so many people that listen or watch, and they're trying to find their purpose. And understanding that concept that it doesn't always look like where you are.
Nah.
So how did you end up on stage and end up being this Trent that we see today?
It's crazy. I don't know if I even can explain it because, you know, I never had the idea of saying, I want to be a successful speaker. Like, this wasn't a plan for me. And I literally can say this was God's plan for me. He picked me. I ran from it. Like, for so long, like, it was like God was calling me. I was like, click, hang up. Like, I don't want to answer that call. I want to do this. And I ran from it for so long in my life.
And what do you mean when you say God called you? Like, is there a voice that you hear? Is there like
Well, it's just, it's just, God uses people, whether it be somebody coming to talk to me and say in conversation. So like we talk about Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship. So I know Dr. Tony Evans really well. Jonathan is my really close friend. So even Jonathan in that situation, we were in Washington together. And he said, Trent, you have a gift. Like you don't talk much, but when you talk, he's like, I know my sisters, my brothers, my dad, you have it. And I was like, man, I want to do music. I'm not trying to hear that. And he invited me to Oak Cliff to speak to kids. And it was probably like, I don't know, a few thousand kids. I didn't want to do it. And he was like, man, are you scared? And use all this tactics. I was like, okay, I'll do it. And in that moment, I had fear. As a matter of fact, I literally prepared the whole night before. Like I knew my speech, it was 5 minutes. I'm like, I'm gonna kill it on stage. And I get up there and I catch stage fright. I forget. And you know how it is speaking to kids. They're like the hardest audience, especially teenagers.
What?
I tell speakers all the time, if you wanna hone your gift, go speak in front of kids.
Yes, you will have hot flashes.
Absolutely.
Like
And so I'm on stage, and what people don't know, like, I'm still hanging on to football. I'm actually supposed to go to New Orleans for arena football the next day. And I made this pact with God. I said, God, if you just let me know, like in my soul, that this is it, even with no physical evidence in the world. I didn't have followers, wasn't nobody sharing my videos. I said, just give me something in my soul. And in that 5 minutes, those kids were locked in. And I always say, in the midst of my biggest fear, I still felt confident. I still felt confident. Even me not knowing what I was gonna say, I still was like downloading things, like I'm surprising myself. And after I got off that stage, I told God, I was like, you know what? That's not good enough. I need to make these 3 calls, and you gotta go 100%. So I called my coach in New Orleans and said, hey, I'm not gonna come because I'm gonna do this rehab time thing. He's like, what's rehab time? I said, I don't know exactly what it is, but me just sharing my story, he hung up in my face.
And like, cause it sounds crazy.
Yeah, he hung up, boom. So I'm like, God, you 0 for 1. And then the second group was some of my friends. So a few of them understood, but most of them were like, Trent, man, what? You're past too bad. You ain't like to talk and all these things like doubt. You gonna do what? You crazy. Like, what you gonna do without football? And then I called my mother, bless her. 0 for 2. So I'm like, okay, I was like, this last one. So I called my house, and I'm thinking my dad, I really want to talk to my dad. He's easier to talk to, but my mother, she passed away now, but God bless her soul. So she answered, and I'm talking to her. And even when she was like, and she's a strong woman of God, she said, you know the devil could speak to you too, baby. Like, and I was like, what? Like, you ain't supposed to say that. and she said, well, what did you feel? And I said, just like I told you, I said, man, I've never felt so much peace in the midst of uncertainty. She said, stop right there. She says, go follow your heart, go follow what God's told you to do. And I wish I could like make this up, but about 3 to 4 months later, videos started to go viral, and it changed my life forever. And that was back in 2010, 2011.
Wow. So what did you do? You started posting on social media?
Just Facebook. Yeah, I just literally pulled out my cell phone. This was the thing back in the day. I know the cell phone thing is popular, but this is when everybody had production stuff. Like people were telling me as a speaker, you have to dress a certain way and look a certain way and talk a certain way, go to Toastmasters, all these things. So I just pulled out my cell phone. I said, what do I have? I don't have no cameras. Put out my cell phone and just literally said, as real as I can put it. And I ended with it's rehab time, and I'm sharing my story, and those things started to go viral literally within 4 months, and it changed my life since then.
It's rehab time. Explain to people what rehab time means to you.
Yeah, so when I first started, it might have been around like Rihanna's song, like checking like the rehab song she had back then. So I don't know why it was in my head, but when I first started, rehab time meant getting my mind and my body and soul right for my next tryout. Because I said, man, I wasn't into personal development reading books. I think my first book was like by Master P, because I was like, I'm into No Limit. So I think it was some book Master P wrote.
This is hilarious.
So it was like some book he wrote. So I'm like, at least he wrote it. Like, let me read it. And so I started reading that book. I said, spiritually, I want to get my life back in track. I got in the Word. And then with my body, I said, man, I want to cut all toxic things out. I'm going to go to 24-hour fitness late night, 12 a.m., work out in there with my friends, and we just going to lock in, no going out, nothing. And it started that, and we started to have conversations in there. Then I started to, back then it was like Ustream or something like that. And I started to Ustream the workouts, and people would ask me questions, and I would talk. So that was rehab time then. But now rehab time is simply, just like when you get a physical injury, it's about putting strength into a weakness. And if you do it right, you come back stronger. It's the same mind, body, and soul. So rehab stands for renewing every heart and body. That's the acronym. But all it is putting the strength back into whatever weakness that you have in your life.
Ooh, I love that, Trent. He mentioned earlier, or you mentioned earlier, you were speaking about this past weekend. You had this show this past weekend. So I went to Trent actually put on a show. It was called Protect Your Peace.
Yep.
Which was phenomenal, by the way.
Thank you.
I think everybody is in this phase where we are desperately searching for peace, or we are desperately lacking peace and don't even know it, and don't even know that is something that God desires for us to have peace. Like He is peace. He is love, right?
Yep.
How do you protect your peace?
Yeah. So there's different ways, but my main way is I call it disconnecting often. And so the best way I can explain this is disconnected from the things that don't connect me with my peace. So that's social media, and people think that's crazy. Like, I'm not on social media like that. And people don't, it's like, how are you not on social media? It seems like you're on there all the time. Like, I have systems in place, but disconnecting from the world so I can reconnect to my soul. My favorite thing is nature. My favorite thing.
Me too. It's something about the sun and the grass and the sounds.
It's healing. It's God's natural medicine for the soul. I say it's God's natural medicine for the soul. From the clarity boost, from everything that you get in nature, it's truly healing. And the beautiful thing about it is that you're surrounded around life, whether it be the plants, the trees, the animals, but also you are disconnecting from the noise of the outside world. You can hear yourself. Some of us, we live in so turned up. We're so busy. We're so always on. We're slaves to requests. We're slaves to all these things. And we can't hear our soul speaking to us and what we need. And so for me, literally, even in the morning time, a part of my Protect Your Peace routine is waking up early, going in my backyard, sitting in the little hot tub, or if it's a cold plunge, I'll do that. I'll meditate. I'll pray. I'll sit out there and give myself what I need. And people say, well, that's selfish. Self-care is not selfish, because if you're taking care of yourself, you're going to be a better you for those that need you to be when you show up in the world. And so sometimes I grab my cell phone and make that mistake. But if I'm grabbing my cell phone, I'm there to put purpose out into the world. Mm-hmm. But literally before 12, and people think it's great, before 12 p.m., for the most part, you're special because I'm here. But for 12 p.m., I'm literally disconnected from the world. It's hard to reach me. And some people say, I can't ever reach Trent. I can't ever reach Trent. And it's not that I'm trying to avoid people. It's just that I'm so centered, I'm so in flow, that if I'm always checking my phone and responding to everybody or feeling the need, I got to answer this call. Like, to me, I don't want to be controlled by outside things that much, because that's when we lose ourselves.
I appreciate you sharing that, because I feel like a lot of times I'm a slave to my phone.
Yeah.
As soon as I wake up in the morning. So for a while, and I say for a while, this new journey that I've been on after leaving the radio station, every morning I was speaking word over myself, I'm the head and not the tail, and it was just flowing. I felt so connected to God. I felt like I had given myself permission to slow down. I felt like the world gave me permission, because they were like, oh, she's going through this transition. So everybody kind of backed up and let me, and I was watching God bring in like intentional blessings and intentional opportunities. And then over time, I've gotten back into this habit of hustling. Yeah. And so it's like now it's been hard for me, and this has just been within probably the last 3 weeks, to speak that word over myself in the morning. It's funny because I'm thinking to myself, Jay, affirm yourself with God's word. And I'm like, I don't feel like saying it out loud. Like, literally, I'm having this conversation in my head, and I'm picking up my phone and I'm answering, because I see 13 texts that have happened since last night. Let me hurry up and answer these back, because people will think that I'm being unprofessional. Getting on Instagram and making sure that I am engaging with everybody. And it is true. I am literally being controlled by everything on the outside, because what will it look like? And in self-care, I'm horrible at it, but I have to remind myself, it is kind of biblical, because it says, love your neighbor as yourself. Well, if you don't love yourself first, how are you going to love your neighbor, right? So I have to kind of like, I got to hone it back now and like say, okay, you're just going back into what you've always known. Now it's just time to refocus. And sometimes hearing that other people are doing it and it don't sound as bougie and it doesn't sound as bad, it's like, so everybody watching, I ain't answering my phone before 12 because Trent said, no, that is really,
you gotta
really
have boundaries. Great. Like it's hard to experience peace if you don't have boundaries. And I talked about this at the event. People think boundaries are walls. They're not walls to keep things out, unless people make it that way and they disrespect your boundaries. Boundaries are bridges.
Ooh,
It leads you to what you need. So if you need peace, what's the boundary that you have to set so that you have peace, right? If you need strength or clarity, what's the boundary that you have to set so you can have those things? And so people think it's a wall, or it's like people are going to be mad at me or whatever. But when you communicate it, like we need to have healthy communication and let people know, hey, I'm not avoiding you, but this is just what I need to be the best me. And you said something about control, and I love saying this quote, peace is something you'll never control if you keep allowing the things you can't control to control you. So there's things outside of you that you literally can't control. I mean, you can answer everybody, and people might still think about you, right? You could be perfect with that, and people are, oh, she's avoiding me, or she's changed, or whatever. So I've learned to like disassociate myself with like control. Like I think really the strongest strength is being able to let go and not have control, and that's when you can truly experience, I feel like, inner peace.
You know, this is so good. As together and like this routine that you have, and you are protecting your peace, and you're setting boundaries, and you're trying to be present for your family and for your career and all of those things, there are still valleys.
Yeah, for sure.
And if it's okay for me to bring it up, at your event, you mentioned you lost your mom.
Yeah.
And I'm really sorry for that.
Yeah.
But it's like, God, I'm doing all these things. God,
Yeah.
I'm trying to do it the right way. And then it's like, here comes this hurt.
Yeah.
How do you get past that? Or how do you, I guess I probably never get past it. How do you deal with that? How do you cope?
Yeah, so it's still hard. And that was the thing at first. Like, how do I get past this grief? And that's not something you'll never get past, right? It's just something you learn to live with. It's a new normal you have to adjust with. So even with grief, you know, so many people struggle with that, and rightfully so, because you're trying to like overcome it. And it's not about overcoming, it's about having a different perspective towards it. So with my mother, I can just tell you what really helped me, and this might help somebody out there dealing with loss, is I remember being in my bathroom, and listen, I was depressed, like straight up. Like, I have to be this person to the world. You know, you've heard me talk about it. I was depressed. Like, I got to show up for everybody. Like, I'm the strong friend for the world. Like, who's there for me? Even though people probably were there for me, it was just like I was pushing people away. So many things going on. I'll even talk about the other stuff during that time. But I remember being in my bathroom, and I remember looking in the mirror, and I didn't really recognize myself. You know, I was being unhealthy, like even health-wise, just all around. And I said, man, and I thought about this. I said, if mom could see me right now, which I believe she does, she would be dying inside. Because I'm allowing her death to be the catalyst for other things dying inside of me. My purpose dying, my mission dying, the things that she cared about. I mean, my mother, like, she would look at my baby's book. You know, she was so proud. And these words came to me, and it changed everything. I said, mom can't rest in peace until I'm living in peace. Because my mom, they worry about their babies. So if she can somehow still feel what we're doing here, she's worried. You know, I told my brothers the same thing. And so those words changed everything for me. I said, man, she's still alive through me. I'm going to honor her. I'm going to celebrate her. I'm going to make her more alive in my life than she's ever been. Just like my friend Anthony. Like, the reason rehab time is what it is because of his suicide. And he was more alive in my life than ever. But during that time, a lot of people don't know, and you might have seen the picture of like my little girl. So my mother had died, and 2 days later, my baby girl, my 4-year-old at the time, I'm literally planning my mom's funeral. I get a knock at the door from across the street and said, Maya, she's passed out. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm like, okay, cool. She's just playing. And I hear fire trucks and ambulances and all these things. And I run across the street. I see her bleeding from her head, unconscious. And so basically what happened is my neighbor was cutting his grass, and we live kind of in the country, and a rock shot out and hit her. And this is 2 days after my mother died. And so my daughter goes to the ICU. Make a long story short, she ends up being okay after about 6 days in the ICU. And while I'm in the ICU, I get a call from my dad, and he's like, I know you don't want to hear this right now. His mother, your grandmother's in the ICU. And my grandmother dies 2 weeks later. And so this is all in this month of March that I'm dealing with, back to back to back to back to back. And it's like, what's going on? And so that was the moment where I realized I feel like what life is about. You know, they say the best things in life are for free, and we don't realize that, but that's truly the true. You know, because sometimes it takes losing something to realize how valuable it truly is to you. And so for me with fulfillment, and I want to just mention this because I think so many people are missing fulfillment from their life. And
Absolutely.
during that time, no social media posts made me feel better. Our new house didn't make me feel better. The car didn't make me feel better. Not saying we can't have possessions, but those things did not fill my soul. It was literally me getting back to asking myself this question: Trent, what truly matters? And that's the question I would ask everybody right now in your life. Like from a scale of 1 to 10, like the things that are 10s in your life, the things that truly matter, spend as much time you can with those things and create as much memories and experiences, because at some point, memories is all you have to hold on to. So create them. And that's what life is about. Not saying we can't all have all the other things, but you'll never have fulfillment if you don't do what you love with who you love. That's fulfillment. That's basics, you know, and that's where peace is. And so it changed my whole perspective. So now I live a life of like, I'm creating experiences, memories. Of course, I have work and doing things like that, but that's not the priority in my life. I want to create memories with those that I love as much as I can.
I love that. Wow. During that time, though, Trent, did you ever question God? I mean, let's keep it real.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I question him a lot. Like, what's going on? My mother was a strong woman of God. Like, why is she going through this? Like, why is she having she beat cancer. I threw her an event in 2018 because she beat it. It's kind of similar. I threw an event for her to celebrate her. She beat it, did chemo, went to her liver. Then she beat it she had liver, went to her breast, she beat it. And then 3 days later, after she rings the bell, she's like, Trent, like, something don't feel right. I'm like, oh, Mom, you just tripping. Like, you're fine. You know, you're just overthinking. Go to the doctor. 3 days later, we finally went to her brain. She has brain cancer. So I'm like, God, what's up? Like, this is one of your strongest soldiers that I know personally that honors you, does. Like, my mom would be like, I'm praying for you taking out the trash. She was like that. Like,
that's how my mom is. I'd be like, Mama, you got a right-hand man. Like,
anything, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, how? And, you know, God told me, it just in my heart, like, basically, who are you to question me? My plan is way greater than your understanding. You know, I have a plan that's way greater than anything on this earth, a divine plan. And seeing my mother still praise God through her sickness and literally still thank God. I mean, some of her last words was like, I thank God. Like, how? But that changed my mindset. See, I questioned it, but I realized that God had already given me the answers if I just open my eyes and look around to see just his beauty and his goodness. And
I think that is the key, because I think a lot of times God does want us to come to him. At least we're coming to him, right? Even if we're questioning him, we're coming to him. But what he did was he opened your eyes to perspective.
There you go.
That was the answer. Oftentimes, especially in the church world, people will be like, you better not question God. And God is like, no, I want you to have a conversation with me.
That's
the same as you want your children to come ask you questions.
That's
you
right.
want them to seek information, whether you give them all the game right then or not, or you give it to them in little doses, right? Like, and God gave you some game in that moment. And he changed your literally your vision.
That's right.
And that's beautiful. I love that, Trent. Okay, I do have to ask you about this. When I was at your event, you went to Africa.
Yeah.
And this was like one of your first events.
Yep. Well, out the country, yeah.
Out the country. Mm-hmm. How the heck? I'm like, we're trying to get to Africa on vacation. How do you make this your first event? And I want you to share the story because, the power of life and death is in the tongue.
Yep.
And, like, I want you to share the story because you literally did not bend. You spoke that thing into existence. There's going to be a lot of people speaking Africa into existence.
Yeah, you should. I mean, speak life into your life. I think, why not? You know what I mean? Like, you got to speak life into your life. And so I had a vision probably, 2011, 2012, when I was first starting rehab time, when this was starting to become my career. And, I just told people, and you got to be careful who you take your vision to.
You better tell that for real.
Because everybody ain't going to get it. And that's a whole nother story. But I told people around me, like, hey, I'm going to go to Africa. I'm going to speak in Africa. It's just on my heart. I don't know why it's on my heart, but I want to speak in Africa. I always wanted to go there. I'm going to speak there. And of course, you know, I got the sympathy, like, okay, I got you, Trent. You can do it. And I got ones like,
You
man,
can do anything
you
you
should
wanna
start in
do.
Fort Worth, like first Dallas. Like, why are you going way out here? Like, you can start at home. And so I've been to Africa, I think 3 times.
Wow.
And it's been my own events. It's not like people bringing me out. I've actually just, you know, I'll go to different countries that follow me and I would just go there and say, hey, like who wants me to throw an event? And enough people show up. And I've been to Cape Town twice, Johannesburg once.
Wow.
And I always get interviewed there. And they always ask, like, are you surprised that you're here? Mm-hmm. And at first I used to be like, yeah. And then I thought about it, I was like, actually, I'm not, because, you know, my mind was already in Africa 5 years ago. Ooh. 6 years ago, before my physical body ever showed up. So all that had to happen was a little bit of faith, a little bit of hard work, consistency, and, you know, reality had to catch up to my faith. And that's what happened. I can tell you, I mean, countries like Fiji, New Zealand, Sydney, London, like all these countries across the world. And that's the power of social media. Mm-hmm. Like social media connects you to the world. And it's just little me with my small team. And we just find a venue and say, hey, let's just go to Fiji and do something. And it's enough people there. They spread the word. And, you know, my Fiji event was 3,000 people.
What?
Because the island's so small, it spread. 3,000 people there. My biggest event yet. And maybe only 300 people knew me there, but they spread it out to everybody.
Yeah.
And so having crazy visions is very important. And, you know, everybody, I always say, and this might sound rude, but small mindsets can't comprehend big visions. It's just, they never experience. It don't mean that they're a hater or they don't get it. It's just they can't even think like that.
Yeah, yeah. So you had the vision, you shared it with people. I mean, it is kind of seem pretty far-fetched, you know, to small mind, probably to people that, you know, don't get it. But you said there was a 5-year waiting period.
Yeah.
So during the waiting period, how do people, there's a lot of people that are in that waiting space right now. Like,
right.
You know, because you get frustrated. I can attest to that. You'd be like, God, I know you showed me. And then the enemy will try to seep in and be like, nah, that wasn't what you think. How did you hold on to that vision for 5 years without allowing either outside voices or just really life circumstances? 5 years is a long time to wait for something to come to fruition.
Yeah. I mean, I really trust God. Like, when I know God has put something in my heart, I really believe. And I know we hear that word believe, but like a lot of people really don't believe. They kind of believe sort of, they have circumstantial belief. Like, I have unconditional belief. When it's in my soul and in my heart, I know. Now, I don't know when. I don't know how long it would take, but I do know if I'm consistent, if I'm dedicated, if I put in the work, if I have faith and I have heart in what I do and I keep showing up no matter what and do the groundwork. I always say progression is an ugly road that leads to a beautiful place. Oof. Right? It's an ugly road. It's terrible sometimes. You question yourself, but if I still stay consistent throughout the process, consistency, that's the main thing in life. Consistency, it will happen. And it's like, I don't know if I talked about this on Saturday, but it's having a gardener's mindset, right? Like when you plant a seed, you don't just sit there and be like, oh, it's not gonna grow. You water it, you take care of it, you make sure the soil is right. Because I mean, I always tell people, you know, good soil doesn't produce, bad soil doesn't produce good fruit. So you gotta make sure the soil is right. And it reminds me, I always tell this story of going to Little Rock, and I'll give the short version of this, but I would go visit my grandfather. He would have a garden. He was a gardener. He was a country boy. And we would go up there and we would garden. And this particular time, I might have been like 6, 7 years old. We drove from New Orleans and came up there and we did our first like planting of a crop. So we took a seed, planted it. My grandfather would say, hey, you know, we'll come back later and check on it. So I literally would bug my grandfather like every 6 hours because I'm 6, 7. I'm like, we planted this, like, where is it at? Yeah. And he would just say, Trent, be patient, trust the process. So the next day I would come back, Trent, just be patient, trust. I told my grandmother on him, actually. I was like, he did something wrong. Just be patient, trust the process. And obviously the harvest didn't show up while I was there. He called me and said, hey, Trent, the harvest is here. And this was months later. And he said, remember this in life, just be patient and trust the process. Patience is a talent. If you can have patience in the process, your life will change forever. Most people are impatient. They give up too quickly. Things aren't going right in their mind. And I think it's about not trying to get like super deep, but like controlling your perspective, having your perspective be your power, not your prison, but also like really controlling like the meanings that you give things. So when something doesn't go right, I don't say, oh, this is wrong. I just say, okay, this door closed, great. It's a door that's not meant for my life. This opportunity didn't come through, great. It makes room for the next opportunity. I literally live through that perspective. And so when something happens to me as failure or setbacks, I don't say, what does this mean? I say, what is this going to mean? And that puts the power in my hands to say, okay, this is going to mean that, something greater is going to happen. So if you can control your meanings and your mindset and your perspective, everything else becomes easy.
I love that. And it's so crazy you were talking about this seed. I heard this story one time about how when you do plant a seed, it says there's a reason why we cover it with dirt. Because if you saw the process, the seed turns black, it gets all wrinkled and ugly, and it actually looks like it's dying. So if we saw the process of a seed, we would be like, oh, shoot, the seed is dying. Let's pull it up out the ground.
That's right.
Right? Trent, like I'm gonna tell you, like, I'm just listening to you speak, and I'm thinking to myself, like, let me tell you, when God puts something on you, nobody can stop it. And I know that you know this, but when I was there on Saturday at your event, your audience is so diverse.
Yeah.
And I'm like, see, I just kind of like watch things, and I'm like, wow, this is like, y'all, I didn't know where I was pulling up to. I thought I was in the wrong place. Some people look like they were going to a motorcycle convention. Some people had on church clothes. Some people look like they were going to a rap concert. I was thoroughly confused. I was like, because normally you pull up somewhere and everybody fits.
Yep.
Because I was like, when I first got there, it was two ladies in church dresses, and I was like, oh snap, I got on Jordans. You know what I mean? And then I saw somebody else, and I was like, he looked like he got off of a Harley. Like, okay. And I say all that because then I go inside and I'm like, this is a black man, a tall, big black man with locks, tatted up, and these people are like yearning for you to pour into them.
Yeah.
And so it is true. And I'm not saying that we don't live in this world where obviously people eat with their eyes, right? But you are obviously walking in your calling because your audience doesn't fit.
Me. Yeah.
I mean, and that's a horrible thing to say, but I'm just saying, it's like, it just goes to show so many people have counted themselves out.
Yeah.
Because they don't fit this box that society told them they were supposed to be in. And you got the locks, and some of them gold, and some of, you know what I mean? And like, you get up there and all of your outfits, they're you.
That's right.
I noticed some of your J's too. Your shoes were clean while you were on stage. But I appreciate you just showing up authentically as yourself, continuing to do that work, and continuing to, I don't know, it's like everything you do is against what society says, And
I'll tell you a reason. Well, I don't know the reason why the audience is like it is. I think I feel that truth, being real, being vulnerable, it has no box. It doesn't. And that's the thing with me. Like, I'm not the guy that's saying I have it all figured out. I'm not the expert. I'm not, I'm this, I'm the top this, and that's not me. I'm just a dude that's literally sharing his journey, wanting to help people. And even sometimes I don't understand it. Like, even out there, I'm like, this is insane. But I'll tell you one of my reasons when I first started this, I did try to at first fit the mold a little bit, right? Oh, you have to dress like this and look like this. But quickly I didn't feel like myself. And I said, you know what? I want to make sure that people that look like me know they can be more than an athlete, know they can be more than a rapper, more than entertainment. When I get on the plane and I sit down sometimes in first class and like, oh, who do you play for? Nobody. I'm an author. And they look like, author, and it's like, I want to show kids that that's cool if you want to do it, but you also can break the mold. So yeah, I'm looking like this now speaking to corporations. I'm looking like this now going to all these places, being myself. And it was one of my like biggest things starting this space. I'm not saying I'm the only person, but I wanted to trailblaze an industry in personal development where it was just white men, in suits and ties. I said, no, I want to come in here, change the game where there's more diversity. And now you look at it, you see less suits and ties. You see a lot of people being themselves. And that was one of my missions. And so for you to say that, like, it warms my heart because like, that's what I set out to do.
Mission accomplished. And like, I feel like even though you've been doing this for a long time, I know you're just kind of jumping back in the wagon because you took some time off. I can't wait to see what God is about to do. You know what I mean? And kudos to you for having enough faith to actually take some time off. Because I think when you were on stage, you said it had been 5 years since you had been to Fort Worth.
Since my last event here, yep.
Yeah, since your last event. Like, you know, again, if the pressures of the world play a part in us, we'd be like, well, shoot, y'all, we got to hurry up and plan something. I don't want people to forget me. So congratulations on everything. You mentioned being an author. So tell me a little bit about your books, how we can get your books, all that good stuff.
So I have 2 books currently out right now. One's called The Greatest You, anywhere books are sold, audiobook. Then I have Straight Up, which is targeted to more young adults. Adults still read it. And I'm currently working on my new book. It comes out January 2024 called Protect Your Peace.
Wow. So like, what does that process look like?
The book process?
Yeah, that's hard.
It's very hard. It's very hard. Right now, I'm pretty much done. I have to turn in next month, but it is a process. I mean, it's a lot, you know, especially being a perfectionist. Like, you want to make sure that people, like, you cover everything, and I'm always switching things. So I got to let it go. It's like, no more adding to it. This is it. Put it to the world. And then the audio part of it is probably the most gruesome part, you know, reading the audiobook. So I tell people all the time, like, go get the audiobook because...
You're the voice of it?
Yeah, I'm the voice of it.
Oh, that is hard.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's very hard. And so
yeah.
that process is tough too. But, you know, it's something special about knowing that somebody's sitting with a book of yours. I feel like even more than just watching me on social media, somebody took time to read a book, buy a book, and just sit down at night and read it. It's just a special feeling.
I love that. Well, thank you for your time. Like you said, for those of you that are watching, he actually came in early before noon, which is normally his cutoff time for people. So I appreciate your humility. I really appreciate you because you didn't have to. And I literally just made the request and you were so open to doing it. So thank you. However I can support you, let me know. Even though you're from Arkansas, you're still home, you know, you're hometown,
yeah, for sure.
you know. So we got to support each other for sure. And for you to come in and support me in this way means so much. Y'all make sure to follow him at Trent Shelton on Instagram. Is there a website?
TrentShelton.com.
Oh, well, that was easy. I could have guessed that. Thanks, Trent. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
All right. Thanks for the support. Make sure you subscribe to the Dash Podcast YouTube channel. Also, we're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and more. And feel free to share it with some family and friends. Thanks, guys.